Hi, it's Jasmin. You know, that girl who did you know what way before the internet ever existed. Join me and my special guest every week as we talk about anything and everything because nothing is too taboo. So punch your ticket and get on board the Krazy Train with me, Jasmin St. All aboard!
Welcome to a new episode of Krazy Train podcast. This week's guest is one of my favorites because he was actually playing on one of my favorite albums of all time, Gutter Ballet. So let's welcome to the show none other than the one and only Chris Caffery. Chris Caffrey, oh my God, it's been, I think, a decade since I've seen you, right? Driving around in Queens one night.
It's been a long time. I mean, we always ran into each other occasionally since we first met, but it's been a while since we actually spent any time. And in the last probably 10 years, I think it's been since I've been out at NAMM, and in that direction, I've stayed this way. I'd started taking care of my mom a little bit more. She got older, so my time off tours leaving kind of decreased. So I would go out to those things even when I didn't need to, just to be there. But that kind of activity I've kind of cut down a little bit right now. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the new Savatage and to see you guys play live. So I have to say, one of the best Savatage albums I personally feel was Gutter Ballet. How did that come about? How did you actually get noticed by them?
Well, I actually ran into a bunch of people. It's funny. I always tell people how I made it was fake ID. When I was 17 years old, my brother was 19. And in New York, at that point in time, when they moved the drinking age from 19 to 21, you were grandfathered in. So you were able to go into bars when you were 19. Now, there was no photo driver's license, were not a must-have at that point in time. So my brother had a paper license, social security card, and a credit card that he gave to me when I was 17. So I was able to go to these bars. And I wasn't drinking, but I was getting to hang out at all the really cool places when I was a little kid. So we were in New York City, and the band Heaven that had the version of Knocking on Heaven's Door that was really similar to the Guns N' Roses one, but it was out before the Guns one. That video was on MTV, and Paul O'Neill had produced the record and was managing the band, and Mitch Perry was the guitar player, and Mitch had left Heaven. So I knew about this, and I knew who the band was, and me, the cocky little kid who thought he was great at 17, went up to the singer of the band and said, "Hey, I heard you're looking for a guitar player." And I had a cassette tape of my band as a kid on me, and I handed it to him, and he called me up the next day and told me he was going to LA to look at some people, but that he thought when he got back to New York, he was going to want to have me play. And I got that gig, and Paul was the producer and the manager. So we went in and did some recording, but there was a little bit of business weirdness going on that happened before I got there, and some things with the singer, and they kind of parted ways. But Paul had just started working with Savatage on the Hall of the Mountain King record. And when he was done with that, he was like, "Well, I want to put another guitar player into that band live because the sound on this record got really big." So he made me the experiment, basically. And I went and played with Savatage. It was funny because I learned all their music, every song on every record, and I was convinced that he said, "Well, Paul was friends with Wendy Dio, and they had Savatage opening for Dio and Megadeth in December and January of 87, 88. And he said, "I'm going to have you do that tour." But I think it was right around December 1st, Sabatage's manager, who worked with Paul, called me up to say the band found somebody in Florida to do this job. And I was like, "No, they didn't. That's my job." And what I did was I paid for a plane ticket to fly myself to Florida. I said, "Look, if I suck, I'll go home and eat the ticket. But if I'm good, pay for me to stay and do the tour." And I walked in a room, and I played a couple songs. They asked me what I wanted to play, and I said just anything. So they played some really obscure things that not many people listen to all the time. And I played through one song, then I played through the song 24 hours ago, and they stopped and left the room and came back and gave me the gig. And when the Gutter Ballet record was being finished, they called me up and asked me to join the band, before that record was done. And that's how I'd gotten in. And it was, really cool for me because, I had just turned 21 and heavy metal was really big on MTV at the time. And Savatage just came out and had that record, Gutter Ballet, and that song, and had a real identity, as a band, and its sound and the way that, Paul was working in the orchestra and the heavy band with the piano. So there was something different about Sabotage, and that was when I got in for that tour. It was a lot of fun too. I mean, I was a 21-year-old kid. Even the first tour, the Dio, when I was 19, out on a tour bus playing arenas. At the time when metal was on MTV, it was definitely a fun time to be in that position. Anyway,
Yeah, I remember that tour actually, in 87, 88 with Sabotage. Now, what places did you hang out at in New York? Where were some of your hot spots? Was it the Cat Club? Was it Alcatraz?
it was pretty much the same every week. Wednesday was the Cat Club. Thursday was like Danceteria a lot, and then Friday and Saturday we would go to one of the two Lamores, whether it was Brooklyn or Queens. We would go to one of those two, and then Sunday was always the Limelight. That was always Sunday night was the Limelight, and that whole scene, which was crazy. And then, oh yeah, like Thursday was this Club Nirvana was the place where I met Alan. It was on the I don't even remember. It was on the building that used to have the news around it in Times Square, and it was on like the 16th floor or something like that. And it was an Indian restaurant on two floors, but at night it was a rock thing. And then Mondays we did the China Club. Tuesdays everybody went to the scrap bar, but by that point in time, I usually didn't have enough energy to drive back into the city. So, and I wasn't drinking at the time. So just driving 2 hours to was an hour and a half into New York City and out to my house where I lived at that time was not something you did. But, when I moved into the city, a lot of those places had started to close, but that was pretty much it. I mean, there was always somewhere else to go, but those were usually like the main ones that everybody did every week, right, in a row. And then, as people came around and toured, they would always be there. So you had to be there on this night because so and so was playing the Garden or so and so was here. So there's always somebody in town that you wanted to be around when they showed up.
See, these guys would come into my place of business. I worked at It's Only Rock and Roll. I was underage, so I wasn't going to clubs. I didn't know about this 19-year-old rule with drinking. I had no clue. Life would have been way different, but I don't really like alcohol anyway, so I don't know.
I never even drank while I
Yeah.
was in high school. I just wanted to be there. That was my brother would wait outside the places for me to get in, and then he would follow about 10 minutes later with the actual photo ID of the name that I used to get in, but they never noticed. But yeah, there were so many places in New York City. That whole scene at that time with Trash and Vaudeville and CC Star and all the rock clothes places, and it was really awesome back then. I mean, it was a fun time. I mean, it was so important in the culture of everybody at our age to get in there and get the studded belts, the spandex pants, or whatever it was we were wearing back then. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun time. I try to tell people that that we lived at probably the greatest time that human beings had ever had, ever will have, from the early 70s until the year 2000, because there was no cell phones, and you just did what you did, and it ended that night, and hopefully you didn't wind up in jail, and that was it. Right? I mean, you didn't have to see it on the internet or hear somebody complaining about it. You got home and you checked your answering machine if you had any phone messages, and that was it. It was
It's such a different world these days. Now, speaking of Sabotage, tell me what's in store for you now, as we were just talking about the monsters of rock prior to the show starting. So I'm excited, by the way. So what's going on now?
it's been a long time coming. I mean, the last tour we had was in 2002, and we played Wacken in 2015, but Paul O'Neill had passed away in a couple of years later. We were going to fire some things up then. Obviously, that really hit us like a sledgehammer, and then COVID came around, so we kind of got paused back. But management called us up last year and got everybody in Savatage onto a conference call and said, "Hey, we got some pretty good offers for you guys to do festivals, and would you want to play?" And me personally, I think I was like smiling and crying at the same time, because it's kind of been what I've been waiting for. I love Trans-Siberian Orchestra and I love what I do in that, and it's just something though about my heart and soul and myself being complete when I'm in Sabotage and doing Sabotage. And I played in other people's bands. Like I played with Doro, and I filled in for bands like Metal Church, and I played with Ripper Owens, but I never took an offer to play in another band, and I just didn't want to do that. I had TSO, and I didn't need to get involved for things for financial reasons. So I just waited. I was kind of just sitting there waiting for Sabotage, and I always knew it was going to happen. I think it took a little bit longer than I expected in the first place, but we started announcing festivals at the end of last year, and we go to South America first. We play Monsters of Rock in Brazil, and then we have a headline show in Sao Paulo on April 21st, which is 2 days later. Then we go to Chile for the very first time. Sabotage has never been there. That's the 23rd of April, I think, for their Masters of Rock, and then Argentina on the 26th for that same festival. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Sabotage never played Argentina either. So you have a couple of places we've never been. And then in June, we hit back into Europe, and we're doing Hellfest for the first time. We've never done Hellfest, but we've been to France, but never did that. We're headlining a night at Rock Wave in Greece, and we're headlining Into the Grave festival in Holland, and we're doing 5 headline shows. 2 of the German ones had sold out. One of them, the one in Munich, they moved to a larger venue, and that's really exciting. We're playing London and Switzerland and Milan, and we've got another festival in Barcelona, the Barcelona Rock Fest, and I think that's it, if I remembered everything correctly, for Europe. But it's pretty exciting to see that. I spent lots of years playing, like I said, with Doro, and being out and about at those shows, and when you'd see the bill and you'd go and you'd look at all your friends' bands playing, and oh, I'm going to be here today. I get to see Queensryche. I know them. I get to see these guys. I know them. And you'd say hi and hang out. And sometimes you'd go up and play a song, but it was definitely something I was missing. I was missing that part of me, was missing being Chris Caffrey from Savatage. It was just like, I would see people say ex-Savatage in interviews and things like, well, we never broke up, so that was the thing that always got me. So now that it's back again, it just kind of feels like everything's full. It's like a full circle, but it's all whole, and that even when things kind of stink, I've got the balance, I think, that I need to really keep me level as far as everything else that I do, and that's a big part of that, is just getting that part of my life back in. And I'm really excited to go out and play that music.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it live. I might be at Hellfest, but I'll definitely be at one of the other festivals during the summertime, because Europe is the best place in the summer. And
Yeah,
of course,
that's why we got Grass Pop too. I forgot Grass
are
Pop.
you going to Grass Pop? Grass Pop's a great one. That's going to be a lot of fun. Into the Grave will be a lot of fun as well. I saw the lineup for that. So Holland is always beautiful during the summertime. By the way, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, my friend Bill Hudson played in Trans-Siberian Orchestra. How do you come up with that concept? Because it seems like it's different musicians for different countries. Is that how you do it?
What it was, I remember when I was in heaven with Paul, he had this recording of this song that he wanted me to hear. It was an instrumental. Paul had worked with Joan Jett, and he was a big part of what was the beginning of her career. And Joan had told me, actually, because I'd heard that Paul had been involved with her, but he never really went too deep into the details. And she had spoken to me at his funeral to tell me that he really was, influential and important in the time when she did Little Drummer Boy, before they released I Love Rock and Roll. And that idea of putting that song onto the radio stations, rock stations that were playing that music at Christmas time when I Love Rock and Roll came out in, I believe it was right after the holidays. She developed a relationship with those stations through that song. So Paul always had that light bulb in his head of wanting to use that concept for a rock band. He had that, dun, 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 he had the Carol of the Bells recording idea down. And when we were doing Savage's Dead Winter Dead record, it was at that point in time where the light bulb went back on Paul's head again about including that song onto our record about the war in Sarajevo. And he had the old cello player was going to be climbing onto the pile of rubble to play music in the middle of this war, when the Bosnians, when everybody was fighting, but they were getting joined together by music. And there was a couple of two different soldiers, male and female. There's the whole story of Dead Winter Dead. And he worked that in there. Now, Paul had always told me that he wanted to make a band that could get together and have limitless creative possibilities, where live you could have a full orchestra playing or just one person and an acoustic. But he always liked Broadway and the ability for there to be multiple singers, because he worked a lot with bands with Lieber Krebs, and he watched a lot of the bands go from, young to older, and he would watch a lot of these tours be, tremendously brutal on one individual singer. So he had came up with the idea of using multiple singers amidst these stories. Now, when Sabotage released Dead Winter Dead, we had our song get played on Mix 96 in Tampa, Florida, which was pretty odd, but the DJ, Mason Dixon, knew the guitar player in Kansas at the time, and they he said, you got to hear this song that's on this Sabotage record. So he played that song, and it went to #1 on the station, which was an adult contemporary song. And I remember we were going to rehearsal for touring for Dead Winter Dead, the tour in Europe, and Johnny Middleton, the bass player, lived in Tampa. I didn't live down there. I'd moved back to New York, away from Savatage, to where we recorded with the studios in New York City. And he said, "Guys, you're not going to believe this. I was driving in rehearsal today, listening to Mix 96, and they were playing Savatage." And we were like, "Yeah, that's kind of weird, but you're listening to Mix 96?" Because it was like, it was the soft rock adult contemporary station. But it went #1, and then the DJ knew Scott Shannon at PLJ in New York City, and he said, "Scott, try this song." And they put it on PLJ, and it went to #1 in New York City, right in Atlantic Records' backyard. So Atlantic was like, "There's a hit here. What do we do with it?" Well, you're not going to do a whole lot under the name of Savatage with that market. So that's when Paul's light bulb went on his head again about that concept he had for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra and the stories he had for this Christmas trilogy of music. And he put Trans-Siberian Orchestra behind that. And the band, we started with one tour, but within the first year, the shows were just selling out. And the next year, we split it into making two. And we had the East Coast and the West Coast, and it just stayed constant for, since 1999. We've been on the road, and every year it's just about 1 million tickets that get sold between the two bands, and it's pretty incredible. And a lot of the singers have come and gone, and musicians come and go. I'm the only person that's actually played every show possible since day one. I can't play East and West Coast, but since the very first day of TSO, I think I'm the only person that's done every show possible. So it's kind of cool, to be a part of something like that since the first day. Since Sabotage, I got into there when they were already established with TSO. It was one of these things where you were in it from the ground up, and it's kind of neat when you get in things that way. I still, a lot of times, I'll watch things like The Dirt and wish that part of me wishes that I had that part in my life story. I mean, I showed up in Tampa, and Savatage was, still in the clubs, and we had a lot of those scenarios from that show. But that, that band that gets together and lives together, and builds from day one in that situation at that time, which will never be the same again. It's something that I watch that Dirt thing, and it's really, it's fun to watch. And like I said, them and Guns N' Roses and bands like that slept on the floors together. It's something that I always really admired. Like I said, I was lucky enough to have a lot of success in the things that I was in my own bands. I had a lot of the same starting scenarios, but to see how those bands went from, their rags to riches thing was always a lot of fun to watch. But then again, I was pretty clean back at that time, and maybe something would have happened where you wouldn't have been as successful if you got that embedded in that whole scene, because a lot of those people didn't make it out alive. So, or they hurt themselves in the process. And, I think we're all a little bit gullible to all the good things that come to you very easily in this business, so I think that, I've had my moments in my career, but I never really went over the edge, and I never got into the drug side of things. But, you always wonder if, you were out there, who knows what you would have done had you gotten into one of those circumstances.
Or what you would have caught or anything like that. I mean, sleeping
Yeah,
on the
I
floor
think
at some of these
I'm better
places.
off playing it where I was, and we were a little bit, we weren't angels, but we didn't go that far over the edge with Sabotage. We were just, a bunch of guys in a rock band on the road. So
Yeah, and you guys had some of the most melodic, well, have some of the most melodic music, which is what probably drew a lot of female fans, I suppose, and the artwork on the album covers as well. I mean, that's what drew me to it. Are you looking for a safe way to bet online where there is something for everyone, including yourself? Then go to betonline.ag, where I am sure you will find something. Don't forget, it's betonline.ag for the most variety and the safest way to bet online.
with me, it was like Sabotage never really was an MTV band, and I kind of had the pretty boy image. So it was one of these things where I got a lot of attention back at the time in that scenario. And I was like, when I was in school, I weighed the same amount as I did when I was 8 inches shorter than I was at that time. So, I was a fat straight A student with glasses, and I never even dated when I was in school. I remember asking a girl to a prom or a dance, and overhearing some girls laughing and saying they would rather go out with nobody than me, and I just became really like shelled amongst myself into my music. So it was kind of a pretty, I don't know, it was just a surreal situation to all of a sudden be on MTV and all of a sudden have people, that were not chasing you around, but if you were there, they wanted to hang out with you. And like, I didn't even have people that wanted to freaking go to the prom. So it was a different situation. But the music for Sabotage really had a lot of attitude and style that went through John's voice and John's brother, Chris Oliva's guitar playing. But when Paul O'Neill got involved producing the band, Paul added in the element of his human side of their lyrics. So the Sabotage lyrics with songs like Believe and the stories of the records like Streets and Dead Winter Dead, that's what connected the people to Sabotage. So when I started to go to Europe and see people from South America or Egypt that came to festivals and would come and tell me that Sabotage had saved their life through the music, that's when I started to realize that there really was a lot to what Paul had done lyrically to that. And Paul would always tell me, like, anybody could write a song about a car or a girl, but it takes something really special to write a song that can change somebody's life. And I saw that with him. And that's the same thing with TSO. A lot of those songs, with the single acts of kindness, or people, he has a song called Ornament, which basically is about a father whose daughter is not home and being the ornament that's not on the Christmas tree at that time. But we would see a lot of people in the audience smiling or crying or whatever during that song, because you had people that may have just lost their mother or their father or their brother or their sister or somebody right before they went to that show. But then in the same respect, TSO had united families back together that hadn't been together for a while. So there'd be smiles and happiness from the people that got back together during the holiday season. So it was a big roller coaster of different things that happened through the lyrics. And that's just one of the songs. You can go through the entire records and find places of the lyrics of TSO songs that do just that, you know, where Paul was uniting people. And like I said, with the single acts, I would leave the studio late at night with him in New York, and he would just go a few blocks, maybe 10 blocks down the road, giving things money to homeless people. And it was really fun and educational to watch the way Paul handled human beings and people. And I think that it's a shame that we lost him, because this is a time I think the world really could have used somebody like Paul, because he just had a genuine, straightforward way of bringing people together at difficult times. And, you know, like I said, we would be out on the road at a time like 9/11, and I would be talking to him about what's going on and what we're going to be doing. And, you know, Paul had passed right before COVID, and I didn't have him to speak to. And even when he passed away, usually when somebody passed, I would call him. And it was like, well, I can't call Paul because Paul had died. It was just, he's still really missed by me a lot, you know, as is Chris Oliva, because he was kind of like my big brother, and I'd left Savatage temporarily, and I kind of felt like I'd let him down because that position in the band wasn't there before me. So the second guitar player position was created for me. So I feel like when I walked away, I let him down. That's why when I had the chance to go back with his brother, you know, in early '95, I stayed and haven't gone anywhere since. You know, I was I was young, you know. Back then too, it was kind of, my brother wanted me to get back into my band with him, and back then you were a whore if you played in two bands.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't be in a band and another band. It was like, no, you have to be in this band. And now it's like you have people that are in 10 different bands and other projects and this and that. The business was a lot different back then. You could not be the band slut. You had to stay in your band, and that's when I left Savatage at that time. It probably would have been different. If it was now, I would have just worked with my brother and did it on the side. But the only thing that really bothers me about that is that the Streets record cover was one that had the band on it, and I was not, because of my own personal decision, which, you know, like I said, I can't change what I've done, but I have placed myself back where I am for the last 30 years. So it's I feel like I'm always doing the right thing for Chris because of the situation that he'd given me. So, you know, a lot of good things happened in my life because of Paul O'Neill and Chris Oliva, and both of them are gone. So I always feel good about going out there and keeping their legacy alive through TSO and Sabotage.
Well, you're back now, and I think that's all that matters. And I know that everybody is excited to see you play live and hear the music. And I think it's great. So at the end of the day, everything worked out for the better. And you're not a pudgy kid with glasses anymore, getting rejected by girls, right?
Yeah.
I feel so bad for you now, because now I remember doing that, you know, growing up to like, anyway, to, you know, the guys that would ask me out.
I've learned so much through my job, and I've learned so much through what I've experienced on the road and through the internet and with people. And, you know, I just try to make sure that I continue to grow as a musician and a human being. I mean, I am not perfect. I never have been perfect. I never will be perfect. I just try to be honest, and I try to, you know, do unto others, and that kind of situation. Like I said, and nobody's perfect. And when we went through those periods of time in our life when we did travel out and about, and especially in this business, when somebody hands you, you know, 8 drink tickets and you're sitting out in a bar, and you know, you get to a certain point where your mouth runs or your activities run where they shouldn't. I mean, like I said, nobody's perfect, and I don't hold things against people that have situations happen that they apologize for, understand. It's like, you know, if that is that person, that's one thing, but everybody's allowed to make mistakes, and we were all living in this crazy fantasy land at that time with MTV and the way, our lives were different to where people were now. I mean, you remember when there was the concrete marketing forums and
Oh
things
my
like that, when
God.
we used to travel
Now
like
you're
NAMM.
dating us.
Well, we used to do things like NAMM for musicians and A&R people. It wasn't for equipment pieces. It was just for bands to be together and to promote themselves. And that part of that business was so big. You had probably, I think, when I got into Atlantic Records, I was in a lot of different bands over a couple of years because I worked with Savatage, and then they were trying to put me somewhere. So they had me in Dirty Looks, and they had me in that band Big Mouth, and then I got back into Savatage. So I was kind of like their house guitar player at 19 years old at Atlantic, and they had a staff of people that just traveled the states looking for bands, and finding them and developing them and giving them the advances to sit there and put the money into their records. It was completely different. Nowadays, there's not a whole lot of money in record sales, and there's obviously not those giant offices. I'd go to my management, who at the time was, just managed AC/DC, Aerosmith, the Scorpions, Def Leppard, Ted Nugent. I mean, Lieber Krebs was the biggest rock and roll management company ever. And a lot of the managers that manage people now, the big companies, grew out of there. And I'd go from that office up to Atlantic, and I'd be just sitting up there scrolling around, wheeling myself on a chair with my feet up. Like, it's like I knew everybody, and there was so many people working. It was such a different thing. And you knew all the people from the heavy metal radio stations, which were very important to us back then, with Munzie and that whole skateboard marketing, putting us into, SOU and those type of places all over the country. There was just a whole different scene back then. I when kids ask me about, what they should do now to make it if they're a musician, I just tell them I don't have the perfect advice for you now, because I'm not out there to know exactly what it is you're up against. But just stay focused and try to be the best you possible, because there's going to be people out there, and the critics and everybody else are going to try to design you into what they want you to be. And nobody told David Bowie what to do. Nobody told Freddie Mercury what to do. Nobody told Prince what to do. They developed themselves. So find yourself. And then I always say, remember that 1+1 is 2. You've known it your whole entire life, but in the music business, there's gonna be people that are gonna tell you it's 3, and you have to smile and say, okay.
But it's a different world these days. And yeah, some things don't make sense. But one thing I have taken out of this whole conversation is that persistence pays. You flew yourself to Tampa and you told them, hey, I'll eat the ticket. If you don't like me, that's fine. I'm done. I accept the losses. But you actually took the initiative, and people sit out there manifesting, which is good. You can manifest all you want, folks, but you actually have to get off your asses and do the work and make it happen. Because if you don't, there'll be another Chris Caffrey out there that will do it, and it'll happen for them and not for you.
Timing does that too, but like you said, you get yourself out there. And if I wasn't in that particular place at the particular time when I got that gig, that opportunity would not have come there. And it was funny because I just flew down into Tampa 2 weeks ago, and we had some people flying in to audition for keyboard player parts for Savatage, and I was on the same flight as 2 of my management guys, and I was telling them, I said, this is where it all started. I was like, I got off the flight here to go audition for Savatage, but the big difference was then I had bought my own ticket and they didn't show up to get me. It's like I got to the airport, there was nobody there. So I got on a payphone, and I don't even know who I called at the time. I think I might have called the manager, who knew how to get a hold of the warehouse they were rehearsing in, because this was 87. There was no cell phones, and they were already there. So they said, "I'll just take a taxi. Here's the address." So I took a freaking taxi like an hour away from the airport, and I walked in there and I plugged in my guitar and I played, and I made a statement, obviously, because I wouldn't be where I am if it didn't happen. But yeah, that was, I didn't want to accept not being in that band. I played that music and it just felt right. It's felt like that's where I should be. And when me and Chris Oliva played the songs together, his lead guitar playing was on a completely different level than me at that time. But when we played Savatage songs together, he sounded like he was playing a stereo track with himself. We sounded identical, and it blew their minds because the band sounded better. That's why they took me, because it was a better sound. It was a bigger sound. And I think there was only maybe one or two little things on all the songs I learned he had to show me, because the rest of them I just picked up naturally off the records because we had the same roots. And that natural connection is what made me and him play together be so special and so powerful live, because he had a mirror image of himself on rhythm guitar, and he was able to go up there and just shine on what he did, and now that it becomes my responsibility to play his parts, I learned watching him. So I have a different experience with that really allows me to go even deeper into the music and bring it that much closer to what it was when he did it.
It's amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. By the way, I don't think you understand. I'm tickled pink to see this finally. I really am.
Well, you won't be down in South America at that time then.
No, I'll be in the Europe.
In Europe, okay.
To one of those shows.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, like I said, I'm looking forward to all of them, but I've never been to Chile or Argentina. So for me, I'm a new person freak too. I like to see things I've never seen. So I'm really interested to see what those places are like. Most of the places I'm going in the European tour we've been to, maybe not the same exact cities, but those two countries I've never been. And it's also been so long. I mean, I remember the first time I saw festival footage of Pantera playing recently. You would see the audience and you'd be like, wow, there's no way any of those kids were even alive when they played with Diamond and Phil. So it's like, and Vinny. So for me, I'm going, wow, maybe there's from what I'm told there is, I'm going to find out there's a lot of heavy metal fans that got to discover Savatage, since we stopped. And I'm really interested to see them. And I'm excited to be able to go play this music to them for the very first time, even if it is in the places we've been before. I think everywhere is going to kind of feel a little new, especially since it's been so long. But all of us in the band, we've been playing together with TSO for the last, 25 touring years that we did. So we're in very good live playing shape. I think that we're going to be a better musical version of the band than we've ever been. And that's just comes from the fact that we've stayed on the road for the last quarter century with TSO. So it's not like we've gotten rusty or fell off the tracks. We've been on the tracks, and now we just riding a different train with this one, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And if people want to catch up with you on socials, what are your socials?
Well, I have 7,000 fake Chris Caffrey pages that appear every day.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Everybody always sends it to me. It's like, why would you think it's me? And I go, is this you? I'm like, why would I talk to you like that and be like, hey, I'm ready to chat with you in private? And they're like asking these people for money. But yeah, I am Chris Caffrey official on Instagram, and I have Chris Caffrey Music on Facebook. My personal Facebook page is just Christopher Caffrey. I mean, you can follow that too. It's hard. The one thing that I have that's a problem with that is you can share Instagram to Facebook, but you can't share Facebook to Instagram. So, it's you can't go effortlessly that way, let me say, where with Instagram, you just do it and it automatically goes to Facebook, and then you don't have to do anything else. It's like with Facebook, you could have the post, but then you'd have to post the same thing again backwards the other way. So I'm able to, every time if I just switch over to both of my Facebooks and then just hit Facebook on Instagram, it moves quicker, and then whatever else things share to, I do that. I try to stay pretty active on it, and now with Sabotage playing, the traffic has been really crazy. I mean, I'll get 500 comments on a post between Instagram and Facebook. Just that's not likes; it's just people's comments, individual ones. So that's at a really high level, even more so than a lot of the stuff I would get on the big tours I was on. So this is showing to me that there's a lot of excitement around the world about it. And I have such a unique history with all the different bands and situations I've been in, and things that I've done. And the other thing that I like about Instagram is the fact that people don't share onto you unless you choose yes. And I mean, that still kind of works with Facebook, but their photos thing gets kind of clogged up because somebody still tag you, and it stacks onto the photos you have. So I kind of have like a little bit of a history book that's been going up on my Instagram page. If you slide through all the photos, you can kind of get it. And as I find these little individual pieces of things in my house and stories and records and things that I've done, it enables me to remember what I'm doing. So it's kind of like I'm writing a book through that, and and putting that down. One of my exes has said to me, "How you never told me the story?" And I'm just like, "Well, I wasn't thinking of that story until I actually saw this picture and started putting up the post, and then all of a sudden, all the things that happened when that picture was taken came out." So I think that's the one thing that I really like about the Instagram thing. Even though they do chop you off at a certain number, you still get a decent number of letters, but I'll get to a point where it's probably two more paragraphs I'd like to say, and then you're out of you're out of letters, and then I'll sit there and try to go look through everything I wrote, and every AND becomes the and signal. And, I try to get at least, let me see if I can at least get 20 more letters. So I try to get another sentence to at least finish it. But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's the best and worst thing that's ever happened to us, social media.
It really is. I mean, I much prefer the old school, just pick up the phone and talk or call, have the actual camera to take the photo. Because I think my biggest pet peeve is just when people start videotaping you or just videotaping, and you're over there, you're trying to enjoy a quiet
Yeah,
moment. It's so disrespectful.
I think if you look at my stuff, that's when I got this little elephant, my elephant Wilbur.
I saw him.
Yeah, he's over on the other side of the room right now, but he was he was a gift to me at one point in time, and I just started to have him show up in pictures with people to show the person that gave me Wilbur where he was and what, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, if I put him in a picture with the guys from Motorhead or these people, it's Wilbur and them instead of me. I hate selfies, so you won't see me walk around like 99.9% of the people do now, where they're speaking to themselves into the camera while they're walking. I don't like doing that because like, hey, here I am. I'm about to go down the street past this tree. That's a nice tree. It's like, no, I'd rather show the tree, not myself. And I always was like that, even with the photo. When we used to take cameras on the road and we had the film rolls, I didn't have myself in a lot of those photos because I thought that it was nice to show people where you've been, but I always thought it was a little selfish to show people yourself there because they might not ever be able to go. So I always thought it was a kind of a selfish thing to go, here's me there. So I've stayed away from that, and sometimes I'll be in the stuff now, even when I'm home doing my guitar stuff. I don't show my face a lot of time. I'll just show the guitar because I'll never believe the hype. I'm the luckiest person alive to be who I am. I don't consider myself any different than any people in that audience, and I never will. And I just have a different job, so I don't really consider it necessary for me to to show myself off personally. You know, it's like if I manage to take care of myself and I want to show people the work I've done in the gym or something like that, maybe every once in a while I might take a picture and be like, hey, you know, because that's something you're proud of. You worked on yourself. I'm 57 years old. If I wind up making myself look like I did when I was 20, I would be proud of that. You know, it's that kind of situation, but I'm not going to run around every day with it and be like, look, I'm sweating today. it's like, it's one of those things. It's like that kind of thing, you know, little bits of everything. I'm more happy with just doing my music and art. That's why I did it anyway. I wanted to get on stage and play guitar and travel the world and make music. You know, it wasn't really about even the money. It was just about, that's what I wanted to do. I never had a backup plan. And people ask me, what would you do if you weren't a guitar player? And I was like, I don't know. I never thought about it. I was 5 years old and I sang Help from the Beatles and Show and Tell, and I never looked back from then. I mean, that's what I was going to be. It was like tunnel vision. That's what I'm going to do. And that's why, I got in my first signed band when I was 17, and I just drove myself to what it was like, this, Luke, it is your destiny. It's like, so that was kind of it.
It's usually how it goes. There's only one other person I've met in my life so far that has said they never had a backup plan, and the person's an actor. He's been on quite a few shows as well. So it works. If you really don't have that backup plan and you focus your energy on that one specific or two specific things, it actually does happen. You know, plus
I
this
would have
is
been
all
the
we
best
know.
I'd been the best zookeeper on the planet, probably, because it's
There you
like
go.
I like animals, and that's probably where I would have wound up. You know, I would have wound up a zookeeper.
Nothing's wrong with that. I think they're better than humans sometimes. That's why I always post those cat pics and cat AI photos all over my Instagram. I just don't like people knowing my business, where I am, or
Yeah.
anything like that. So I don't post things actively.
Other than house cats, human beings are the only creature on the planet that will kill for fun or kill for no reason. You know, we don't think like animals. Animals have, in a lot of ways, more humanity than humans, and that's where a lot of that comes from. They kind of take what they need. I mean, they do eat to survive, and animals will kill other animals, but unless they're killing to eat, they just don't kill. You know, it's like we're not. Last I checked, most of us aren't, having human sandwiches. So it's like, but
Well,
there's
no.
a lot of people that somewhere in the world right now, somebody just got killed by another human being, and it's insane to think that. So when you say you like animals better, it's like, well, animals could teach a lot to people. I just think that there's a lot of good inside of my dog. He doesn't care about anything but me. He's happy to see me, and he's not looking for anything outside of the box. He doesn't want to be another dog. He wants to be this dog. He wants to be my dog. He wants to hang out. He doesn't want to be like, hey, this dog's riding around in a Corvette, and that dog's probably getting onto a private jet. I want to be that dog. It's like, no, my dog's perfectly okay being this dog. And I think that's the kind of thing where social media creates that atmosphere to where that desire to be something else or somebody you're not, and this and that, because I think that's kind of, like I said, why I tend to be a little bit more detailed into what it is I'm seeing, instead of me being the thing that's always talking about what I'm seeing. It's like, it's pretty obvious that it's me. It's like,
Yeah, I guess.
you're on my page. It's like, I
This isn't
understand
AI.
people want to see you do what you do, but I just, like I said, and I'm getting older too. I mean, I look at these photos that I had, I'm doing a 20-year anniversary. Well, it's not anniversary, but it's like 20 years of the Music Man. I'm doing my first vinyl release as a solo artist this year. And I was looking for photos to put into the record because it's my first vinyl release and there's going to be a cool package. And I remember these photo shoots that I had. And if you had 100 photos back then, you would pick, what you thought was the best one, and the other 98 you thought were terrible. Now, I'd kill for the 98 ones I thought were terrible. It's like you look at photos now, and it's just, I get it. We all have to get older, but a lot of times it's like, how come there was no cell phones when, all the photos you took just looked like you might be making a face, but you didn't look weird and stupid. It's like you just now it's so hard, especially with the HD and everything like that. You get up on stage and it's like, God, you put on 5 pounds and it shows up and they're like, I'm a fat slob. So you're like, ah, and it's just one of these things where, but we notice it and people notice it, and not everybody does. I get amazed when I'll see people put up 100 pictures from the show we did last night. They put up every one of them, and 95 of them are really bad pictures. And you'll see people going, that's such a great picture of so and so, and I might not, like, it's not even be a picture of me, and I'm like, that picture's awful. But maybe it's just because since we're the ones behind the camera, we get a little bit more anal about what it is people may think of us, because everybody always says, oh, no, nobody sees it that way but you. And I'm just like, okay.
I think we're our harshest judges. I mean, there's a guy who put videos up. This is how crazy the world is. There was a guy videotaping me working out at the gym. Okay. Then I didn't know he was videotaping me. Fine. So, well, actually not fine. Then he went onto his social media and someone else saw it because he tagged the gym, calling me a fat whale, calling me a fat piece of shit. Go work out harder, you obesity, you monstrosity. I'll give you 5 chicken fingers. I was like, what the? So we found it, like, it's taken down now, right? But the fact was that he did it. And I don't think to be like 102 and be called fat, like, what world do you live in, you sickos?
Yeah, like I said, that's one of these things. And trust me, I've known you for a very long time, and you're aging. You look the same. You're still
Thank you. So
beautiful and
do
hot as
you.
you've always been, and you're always. That's it. I mean, you are who you are. I was always really happy that when we had met through friends and stuff like that, that when we did become friends, because it was one of these things, because you were somebody that people knew, and it was as that person that had people that didn't want to be friends with them. I was like, she's cool and she's famous and she wants to be my friend. It was like we just hung out as friends, but it was like, it's like you actually wanted to be my friend. Nobody wanted to be my friend when I was a kid. It was like, even to that point, it wasn't about dating. I didn't do anything. It was kind of like, all right, well, I'm going to be a complete geek and get the hell out of here. That's why I graduated when I was 16. I got junior and senior year together and got out. I was like, this is, it was crazy. I just didn't really find anything that I got out of being in high school. I found X. It comes before Y and Z. I'm out of here. It's like, I find X. I did. See ya. I'm gone. I'm going to go explore the rock and roll world. So.
Yeah. Well, you live a very charmed, blessed life. You're very lucky to have had such an extensive career, and such a career that has expanded for these decades. And, you still want to go out there and do this. And people obviously still want to see you play live. So I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. It's going to be
It's
going to be a fun year.
It really is. And thanks for joining me today. And if you can give out your Instagram again really quick, and everyone could see Wilbur the elephant. He's really cool. I got to get my photo with him one day.
But this is Wilbur. He's still got his Valentine's hat on, but he's very popular. He's just got Wilbur the Metalfin on Instagram, and I think he's Metalfin on Facebook. But I'm Chris Caffery official on Instagram with no slashes or dots.
Well, thanks again. And don't forget, everyone, to check out Savatage and check out the shows when they have their North American tour at some point. They're definitely doing Europe, South America. Stay metal, keep those horns high, and those heads banging. Woo!